Welcome to the Good Ride, and thanks for being here while I talk about the Good Ride Freeride favorites. If you don't know the Good Ride, I've ridden close to 800 snowboards. On top of that, I extensively test and compare. And just so you know, this is no pay-to-play favorites list. These boards earned this spot by how well they ride. So what's a Freeride board to the Good Ride? This is a tapered, directional, pretty set back board. They're better in powder than all mountain boards. They're not super set back like snow surf boards, and they're a normal length, unlike short wides. So first up is the Jones Flagship. This is a very versatile big mountain board for those who like to go fast. It's pretty tapered, directional, and set back. Has a decent camber between the feet with some early rise before the spoon nose and tail. The spoon tech doesn't bleed too much into the effective edge, so it doesn't have that washy feel on groomers. It's got a fast base, really solid edge hold, and what I like probably the most about this board is the setback inserts. Even though they're pretty wide, they really help you get extra directional float in powder. It's a very versatile board for people who like to be as aggressive as you want, but in tight spots you can skid turns. You can mellow out and just have a fun turning experience, but you can also straight line and go big. That's what makes this board so special. Next up is the Amplid Souly Grail, a board I just tested last season and fell in love with instantly. This has a decent amount of taper, a decent amount of setback on board, and it's pretty directional. It's mostly camber with just a little bit of early rise before the nose, going to a spoon nose that is only lifted sides in the nose, nothing in the effective edge. Most freeride boards require a little more back foot weight on groomers and less back foot weight in powder. This, you can drive just as hard off the front foot as you can center weight it or back foot weight the turn. It's a really unique, cool feeling. This is also one of my favorites to carve and get air with on this list. But here's what really is special with this. It has unparalleled chatter absorption. So while it might not be the best floater in powder, this can tackle any condition and never get cranky. Most boards don't have this kind of pop and this kind of chatter absorption. It's usually one or the other. This gives you the best of both worlds. Next up is the Burton Gril Master. It's got a lot of taper for a freeride board, and it's pretty directional, but it's not that set back on stance compared to many boards with this much taper. It's got directional camber from pretty much the tail to a little bit before the nose. And although it doesn't have a really fast base, it's just such a pleasure to turn, such an easy board to ollie. It's got really good float and can hang in low angle powder like I see at Mount Bachelor a lot, but still ride steeper angle powder very well too. What I really liked about this board is its flex personality. It just doesn't feel as stiff or aggressive as many of Burton's freeride boards, so it has almost that all mountain feel in a tapered directional ride. It was just a really satisfying turning experience. You could even throw it around switch pretty well for a board with this much taper. I'd say it's a very great one board quiver. The only time I'd avoid this board is if you see a lot of hard snow. So next up is the Weston Backwoods. This is pretty tapered and pretty directional. It's not super set back on board though. It has a directional camber with a little bit of early rise before the tail and a good bit more before the nose. The camber's medium-sized between the feet. It has a very fast base, very competent grip, and is a pretty stiff, damp board. This is great for those of you who want a little bit of that surfy feel, but don't want to be riding all the way back on the tail like you would a snow surfer. So this is like big mountain surfy slashy, but it can still bomb and go straight, no problem. It's a very versatile one board quiver. I found it did pretty well in low angle powder. Not the best, but very competent. And that fast base just glides so well. It's fun to carve and turn. Next up is the Jones Mind Expander. I usually don't like to have two of the same brand in my favorites list, but this just earned it. It's the polar opposite of the Flagship. This is a more turny, much more tapered, much more set back, directional ride that still isn't way far back on the tail like a snow surfboard. It's far from being a terrible big mountain board, but it definitely appeals to the more turny rider like myself. It has a fast base, it's got a decent amount of camber underfoot, going almost all the way to the tail, with a little bit of early rise before the spoon nose and tail. There's a good bit more spoon nose than tail. You feel a little bit of it on the groomers, but you mainly feel that amazing spoon nose turning experience in powder and very soft snow. It's got pretty competent grip in hard snow as well, and it's a fun board to carve. It's not like the old Mind Expander that was surf rocker and mainly a powder board. This is a very versatile groomer and powder board. Next up is the Yes Pick Your Line Uninc. This is a very tapered directional board, but not super set back on board. It's got hybrid camber that's a little set back, so there's a good bit of early rise before the tail, and even more so in the nose, but there's still enough camber to really have a fun time carving with. What I really like about this board is it's a little more set back than the regular Pick Your Line and a lot more tapered, but it still has that aggressive disruption in the side cut that can handle hard to icy snow really well. However, in powder and on good groomers, this is still super fun. It's got more energy and more pop than the Pick Your Line, and it has this slashy, surfy feel while not being super set back. It can handle low angle powder pretty well, but it really comes alive in medium to steep angle powder, and it just has a really fun turning experience in groomers and powder that I really enjoyed. It's on the mid-wide side, but if you size down maybe just a little bit, you can handle it with size 9 boots like I could. Next up is the K2 Alchemist. This has a decent amount, but not a lot of taper. It has a mellow camber between the feet, a decent amount of early rise before the nose, a little bit less in the tail, but more than most boards. While I wasn't that stoked on the base glide, everything else about this board is really fun. This has really good pop for this kind of camber profile. And while it's not a great low angle powder board, it's a very good big mountain freeride type of board. It's great in everything except for hard micro bumpy snow. What I really liked about this is you can point it, but when you're not in the mood for going big, going straight, going fast, you can mellow out and have a really good turning experience with this board. It's another great forgiving charger. Now this last one will be a surprise to you. This is the Decathlon Landscape. This is a super cheap board for those of you on a budget, but you want to compromise as little as possible. Davey and I both were incredibly surprised by this tapered directional ride with a set back hybrid camber with a good bit of early rise before the tail, a little more before the nose. It just had a very good turning experience, and we just couldn't believe how well this did for this price point. I'm not saying this is going to hang with a lot of these boards on this list. Those are special, but we haven't found a board that comes even close to this for this price point. So there you have it. That's my Freeride favorite list. There are lots of other great freeride boards out there that could appeal to you more. So go to the Good Ride, use our sorts, use our filters, our comparison tool, and find the freeride board that's right for you.